I was never really a runner. The way I see running is a gift, especially when you have stage 4 cancer. I'm Anne. I'm running the Boston Marathon, presented by Bank of America. I run for Dana-Farber Cancer Institute to give people like me a chance to thrive in life, even with cancer.
Join Bank of America in helping Anne's cause. Give if you can at BofA.com/supportAnne. What would you like the power to do? References to charitable organizations is not an endorsement by Bank of America Corporation. Copyright 2025.
Hi, and welcome to the 10-Minute Food Truck Training Podcast. My name is Bill Moore. I am a food truck business trainer, author of Food Truck 101, Beginner to Winner, and Food Truck 201, Get Off the Truck. This podcast is all about helping you start and grow your food truck business. For the next several episodes, I'm going to dedicate them all to my book that I always mention when I start the podcast, and that's Food Truck 101, From Beginner to Winner. And we're going to go through that book chapter by chapter, because I'm going to be doing an audio version of it here later in the fall. So starting with chapter 1, it's entitled, I Have a Food Dream. This chapter is all about basically research and getting you prepared for what's going to be facing you as you get into your business. There's really two key elements in this chapter. The first one is discussing your why, the why you want to get in business. When I have people talk to me about, hey, I want to start a food truck, I always ask them why. Because a lot of people think it's just cool life, the nomad life, driving from town to town, city to city, and just sharing your food and having a whole bunch of people enjoy it and you make a whole bunch of money. Well, that's not actually how it works. There's lots of red tape you got to go through. There's lots and lots of regulations, and some states make it easier than others. So your why has to not only get you through all the red tape, but then it also has to help you when you're facing an event where you've been told there's only going to be a dozen food trucks and there's actually 50. You're going to have to get through those weekends when it rains all weekend, and then the next weekend when you're hoping to make even more money, it rains again. So now you've gone a whole month with only working maybe 1 or 2 days. And you got a whole bunch of bills to pay. So you got to have a why that will push you through that. Your why acts as your hand at your back so that you know there's an urgency. I've got to get this done. And you don't accept, oh man, it's raining, I'm just going to have to close my business. If that's your first thought when you hit a speed bump, this business ain't going to be for you. And I hate to break that to you, but the business can be tough. And it's tough on people that don't prepare. So establish your why, and it doesn't matter what the why is. It only has to make sense to you and be meaningful to you. When I first started doing this, I was already working in a restaurant, so I already knew food service. My first event was for a charity event, but the second day when I went out was all for me. And my thought was I would really like to buy a stereo. This was back in the early 80s when people still had the 3-foot-tall speakers and then each individual component, cassette player, maybe even an 8-track tape player. You had the turntable, you had an equalizer, you had all those different components in separate different pieces. And that was what I wanted to do. That's why I wanted to make a little bit of extra money. And then after I bought that, then my goal became a little bit bigger. I always had a why that was pushing me to get out there and work in a restaurant all day long and then get out and work in a hot dog cart or a hot dog trailer throughout the evening. I always had a reason why I was out there. Money only takes you so far as a motivator because especially if you're working 2 jobs, because you'll always get tired. Oh, I don't need to work today. I've made enough money. My why was always an object or a thing or something I wanted. I mentioned the stereo. After I bought the stereo, I went into vacations. I wanted to get something for my hard work that I wouldn't have been able to afford just by working in the restaurant. So you develop your why, whether it's a vacation, putting your kids through college, buying a new car, buying a bigger house, saving up for a down payment for a house, whatever the why is, write it down and then stick it where you can see it all the time so that when you are faced with those challenges, you go, you know what? I can get through this because I want whatever is your why. So once you get into the research part, you got the why written down and you know for sure you're going to make this business work no matter what comes up. Now let's make it legal. So you have to go through and research and find out what your city, your state, your county all require for you to operate a business. Many states make it easy. Some states make it really, really hard. But what you want to do is start at the highest level, which will be the state level, and work your way down to your city level. And it's a simple search. Just use whatever your favorite search engine is and then type in starting a business and then follow that by your state. That will give you generic information on what rules and regulations you'll have to face just to start a business. Now, because we are a food business, we also are going to have licenses specific to us selling food. So once you've got all the basics down for what it takes to start a business in your city, state, and county, then it's going to be starting a food truck in your city, state, and county, and see what all those rules and regulations are. If you're super lucky and live in a state like Florida, we only have one top-level food license, and that's at the state level. The cities and counties can't throw on the nonsense that other states do, like Texas, for instance. Every little city has their hands in your pocket trying to charge you money so that you can sell food when all you need really is a state-level license. But the little cities go, nope, that's not good enough for us. We want some more money. So I know vendors in very populated areas in Texas, which is a good place to be. Lots of people hungry there. But in a 5-6 mile radius, they have 4 or 5 licenses that each cost them $500 a year. That is the government putting too many hands in your pocket. But you have to live by those rules and regulations. It would be way worse if you try to set up without getting permitted, because then now you're facing fines and potentially jail time. So let's do it right. So when you start and you're searching on the search engine, ignore the advertisements and the sponsored by nonsense that Google and all the others put up first, because those may not have the information that you need. You want to go to the official government sites. They usually end with .org or .edu or .gov, or they could even be .state.us. But make sure it's an official site. Don't go to a builder site. Don't go to LegalZoom. Don't go to any place that's going to link you to what they say is the information you need. Go directly to the information. And again, do it for city, county, and state. So when it comes to the health department, when you get to that point where you're going to be researching your health rules, and it may not be the health department. We generically say health department, but it could be a whole different agency. It could be what they call environmental health. Some states call it that. Some states it's the Department of Agriculture. Some states call it licensing and inspections. Whatever your state calls it, you're looking for the food establishment license, and then one for a mobile vendor. But when you are ready to talk to those folks, have your questions and be thinking about everything pertaining to food. Because what you're going to find out is your state most likely has more than one kind of license. So you got to have an idea what you want to sell. You don't have to worry about the recipes, but you've got to determine, am I only going to sell prepackaged food? Am I going to sell food that's relatively safe, like a hot dog? Or am I going to sell something that's a little bit more complicated, like raw proteins? And each of those could potentially have a completely different license. So you want to find out what you want to sell and then get the appropriate license for what you're going to be selling. Now, your state most likely is going to require some type of food handler or manager certification. Now, I'm telling you, whether your state requires it or not, to go out and get it. You want to be the best you can be, then you need to educate yourself on proper food handling procedures. Get the food manager certification. Commonly, we refer to it as ServSafe, because that's just one of many brands that do it. There's about 6 or 7 companies that do the exact same thing. They give the same test. They have you study the same information, and then they just charge different amounts depending upon how popular they are. ServSafe, being the most well-known, also is the most expensive. But whether your state requires it or not, go get it. You need that information. That's going to help you to be successful. This career is not as just easy as throwing a few ingredients in a pan and going, here you go, have a great day, it'll be $20. As much as we would like to think it's that easy, it is not. When you're talking to your inspectors, especially with you being a mobile food vendor, they may not be as up to date on their rules and regulations as they should be when it pertains to a mobile food vendor. So if something sounds peculiar to you, because remember, you're researching, you're reading, you should have an idea of what the answer should be when you're looking for clarification. If something sounds a little weird, you don't puff up your chest and do what some pretend gurus out there say to do. Don't give it to you in writing. That's the way to go. Because as soon as you start demanding, hey, give it to me in writing, you already set yourself up as being adversarial. And they will remember that. And they will look for every little single thing they can that's wrong in your establishment. And don't think for 1 second you're going to be perfect, because you won't. So if something sounds off, you ask for the interpretation or the guidance memos. An interpretation or a guidance memo is something that they put together when they establish the rules and regulations, especially the ones that are different than the federal model code says. So what this interpretation or guidance memo does is it tells people that do the inspections what to be looking for and how to be looking for it. Basically what it does is it calibrates all of those inspectors so that there's consistency across the inspection. So that if you get 2 or 3 different inspectors, they're all looking for the same things. And you don't hear this, well, I don't really care about that. Because when you hear someone say that, I really don't bother, that doesn't bother me. You can do it that way. It's no problem. You need to find out what the real reason is and go do what the real rule says. Because that person's going to either quit, get fired, or retire. And when one of those things happens and you get a newbie in there and they're going, hey, nope, you can't do it that way. What are you going to say? Well, the other guy let me. You can't. Do it right. So in order for you to do it right, you got to have the interpretation or the guidance memos when something doesn't seem to fit what you're reading in those rules and regulations. Remember, you're responsible for those rules and regulations. Now, if you're going to be traveling, like a lot of people love to travel, there are such things as temporary permit events. These temporary permits have a lower threshold on what it takes for you to get certified for that particular event because it's only going to be for a few days or a few weeks. So if you're going to travel and that's your goal, have that planned out and know what the requirements are for those temporary permits. Every once in a while, it actually is cheaper to get an annual permit than it is to get a temporary permit, especially if it's a temporary permit for like a 14-day event. It just may be cheaper to go ahead and get the annual one and go to a couple different things within that particular city or county or town or state. So that is all of Chapter 1. That's what we talk about, the research. And continue to ask questions and write down information and take notes and get ready to jump into the things that move your business forward. That's what we talk about on the next episodes coming up. So write down your why and then do the research on all the rules and regulations and all the permits that are tied to running a business. So it's not just getting that one single license, because you'll have other things you have to do to meet whatever the requirements are in your county or city or state. Thank you guys so much for listening to the 10-Minute Food Truck Training Podcast. If you're finding all the information helpful to your business, please become a monthly supporter of the podcast. Just hit the support button or follow the link in the description. Every little bit does help keep us going. Join our Facebook group. It's called Food Truck Training. We have a whole bunch of awesome members at all different levels, from brand new beginners to decades-old veterans. They've all got your back when it comes to helping you with your food truck. And again, thank you for listening. Come back tomorrow because I got plenty more to say when it comes to helping you and your food truck business grow.